So this is exciting to be here. All right, so I'm going to start this talk by, before I get into the 7 factors, I want to ask this question. If serious games is a solution, what's the problem? So all the time we talk about solutions, I always like to set it in context of what the problem is, because obviously the solutions have to be designed for the problem. So here's one problem. In the US, I'm not sure about Canada, but in the US, we have huge number of readmissions. Unscheduled visits to hospitals and clinics and unnecessary calls. My beautiful wife here is a nurse. She had many calls, unnecessary calls. It's costing billions of dollars. In the US, conservative estimates suggest that the cost of readmissions costing Medicare $41.3 billion. That's a lot of money, isn't it? Wouldn't you just like yes, per year? People suggest that 50% is preventable. 50% of $41 billion, wouldn't you just like $1 billion? Maybe even just $1 million. Holy cow, that's a huge, tremendous amount of money. So what is causing these readmissions? Well, we know patient and family education can help. We know that patient and family education improves understanding of disorders, diagnosis, methods for managing these conditions. It can enhance self-advocacy, compliance, use of services, and treatment outcomes. But we also know that 60% of people don't understand the information about their treatment. 50% do not understand the information while in the hospital. 80% forget it after they're told. Oh my gosh. 50% recall the information incorrectly. And we're wondering why we have such high numbers of readmissions. So we know these are the primary contributors to the preventable readmissions. Poor preparation for discharge, low health literacy, failed to see a physician, lack of all these things I believe we could address. So if we can innovate patient and family education, patient-provider communications, by creating these mHealth apps. How many of you have heard or seen or interacted with mHealth apps? Aren't you guys healthcare people? You don't do healthcare? Don't believe in mHealth apps? Yes, some people? Okay. So creating mHealth systems that inspire healthy behaviors, that's a difficult one, right? How do you inspire healthy behaviors? Prevent disorders, improve patient-family outcomes, reduce. So this is kind of what I'm dedicating the rest of my career to try to do. So what do we know about mHealth apps? Widespread. You can give people the ability to access, process, communicate data in real time. Ideal platform, really, for creating a simple, effective things like diabetes, amongst other things, management programs. We know that some mHealth apps for diabetes can have these consequential treatment effects and used by patients with their provider. So we know this. There are 5 different categories of mHealth apps. We know the 5th one, when it's clinically integrated, can actually have an effect on patients' behaviors, positive effect. The top one, direct from consumer, that's the ones you get off of your, Google, and you find them and download them and ignore them after about a week. Some keys to success. So we have quite a bit of data about how to make these apps and make them successful. But we also know that these things have challenges. Sustained use and engagement. How many of you have downloaded like a health app on your iPhone? If you look at how many, do you have an iPhone, right? Do you have a health app there? Diet kind of, food kind of thing. Exercise, right? Most of you have one. How many of you use it? Pete uses it. That's pretty good. Inherence and self-regulation, ambivalence and motivation. So as I interact with doctors, patients, nurses, and all, we know that people become ambivalent. Few of these help apps have a curriculum to educate people. They're more performance-based, which is fine. We want to focus on performance, but I think if we educate people too, it can help. Input, data, and management. That's the problem, right? You get these ones with the diets and stuff, and you got to put in the calories. Have you ever done that? Pain in the ass, isn't it? I don't like to do that. That's why I don't do it. It's like I want them to just take a picture. How many calories is this? No, that's wrong. Cut it in half. That'd be good. So that's the problem, right? I think that's a problem I think serious games can help with. Look at those challenges. Sounds like something serious games can address, right? I think so. So that's one of the things that I'm really focusing on. So if that's a problem, and there's others in healthcare certainly that I'm sure you're interested that might be here, you might be here for motivation. So what are 7 factors you might want to consider? And I'm an instructional designer. I admit I'm not an entertainment game designer. I like to say that because I work with some, and they're brilliant. Oh my gosh, the stuff they come up with, Rick Hall in particular, one of my favorite game designers, he worked in EA for most of his career. Now he's at the Florida Interactive Entertainment Academy, which is in the top 3 game design graduate schools in the world, actually. And luckily, they're in Florida, someplace warm, like around, and I get to meet with him all the time. So these are more primarily from an instructional design, educational perspective, including when I'm designing games, when I'm working with Rick, I come up with. And we have to be serious about this. Remember, this is serious games. Be serious. Are you serious? She looks serious. Everybody else serious? No, you're having too much fun. Be serious. All right. So first one, learning styles. Show of hands. How many people here believe in learning styles? Put your hands up. Put your hands up. Learning styles. Wrong answer. We have debunked the idea of learning styles, folks. If you believe in learning styles, please change your beliefs. Let me show you why. If people had learning styles, you would have verbal learners do well with audio and text and not do as well with other forms like graphics, right? That makes sense? And if we had, and you were born with a learning style, and you were a visual learner, you would not do as well with audio text, and you do very well with graphics. You'd get this aptitude treatment interaction called ATI. And this is what you would predict if people were born with learning styles. We never, ever get these results, folks, whenever we do research comparing media and with learning styles. Just a bunch of faculty that figured out they could publish, get tenure, and make lots of money with these tools. People are not born with learning styles. People are born with learning preferences. So people who don't like to read, guess what? They like pictures. But we all like pictures, don't we? And we all learn from multimedia representations of the information as long as you don't create cognitive overload. So yes, I agree we have learning preferences. If people don't like to read, and a lot of people don't like to read these days, they like to see pictures and video. Whoa. They don't, people are born to learn physiologically in basically the same way. But they do develop preferences. All right. So if people do have these differences, what can or should we do? So number 6, I actually did 10. Who knows David Letterman? Top 10 list? Fun, right? At least some people are about my age here. They remember David, that's good. But I didn't have enough time to do 10, so I'm down to 7. So here's number 6. Psychographics and 21st century learners. So this is what we don't want, right? This is what we're trying to do with serious games, to address this issue. people are coming to classes at school. Education is not designed for today's learners. First generation to grow up supposedly in this digital age, surrounded by all this digital technology. Here's some serious again, but very scary statistics. 58%, this is from a textbook company that I work with. 58% of US adults never read a book after high school. That's scary. 42% of college graduates don't read a book after college. And these people all have very diverse interests. People just don't read as much. If they do read, it's a very surface scanning the internet, a couple pieces of information here or there. Very different type. How many of you have noticed the problem with writing? How many professors here, educators? Problem with writing, right? Directly correlated with less reading. People don't read, can't write. That makes a lot of sense, but they don't have learning styles. So we have Prensky and other people suggesting these differences between digital natives and English. Relatively less data to support this, but intuitively it makes a lot of sense. One thing I do want to note that digital natives, how many people have children here? They really cannot parallel process. So we have lots of data that says that they're just scanning on the surface and doing, but they're not parallel. So the next time they tell you, if you have children, that we're parallel processing, so that's why we can do all these things when they're doing homework, say, no, I don't think so. But there are certainly differences. What are some of them? So this is just a small segment of the population. Okay, this isn't the large population. I'm just talking a small segment between 18 and 35-year-old white males. Why did I pick white males? Because the guy I worked with was a white male. So, which one are you? Are you any of these? Which one would you be? Yeah. Sorry, I don't think you go in the 35-year range. You're young. So we have this. We didn't have this diversity 20 years ago. We were much more homogeneous 20 years ago. But now we have all these different interests. We cannot assume that the same experience is going to engage all these different groups of people. So before, I used to teach all my instructional designers, when you're learning or analyzing learners, look at these things. Traditional instructional design, learner analysis, these characteristics. Notice the learning preferences. She raised her hand when she said she believed in learning styles, so I'm picking on her. Now, we're going into psychographic analysis. So now I'm working with my game design. They taught me how, when they design video games for entertainment, they do psychograph. What are their interests? How do the target population use their free time and money? And that way you get insights into what motivates them and interests them. So I really encourage people when they're doing serious game design to really do a psychographic analysis of the learner population. What are their behavioral traits, stylistic preferences, spending habits? You get these great insights that then is the foundation for theming games, for creating the tone of games, for many things, game mechanics. A lot of game design decisions we based on people's psychographics rather than their demographics. Number 5 thing to think about. Anybody remember, I guess in the 90s, interoperability and reusable learning objects? Anyone get into that movement? No, maybe I should skip this one then. No, you want to hear it anyway? Okay. How many of you heard of performance ecosystems? So this is a very popular topic. This is like one of the biggest trends right now in industry. How do we make all these systems within a corporation, organization talk to each other? Right, Pete? We got lots of these data. This is a big data man I met this morning. I like Pete. I need to know more about him. Okay? So we have all these systems within an organization. Legacy systems, learning systems, management systems, support systems, all these. So now they've created a series of technical standards, XAPI, API, that allow these systems to share data. To go along with this, if you get into the learning aspect, we've tried to create these learning objects, right? So these reusable learning objects came from the military in the 1990s, SCORM, shareable content reuse. And it makes a lot of sense. You're in healthcare, right? Most people in healthcare. So what's a fundamental healthcare topic that's taught to millions of people around the world? Behavior therapy. So if you have one electronic course on behavioral therapy and you poured $1 million into it and it's beautiful and you shared it with 1 million people, how much would it cost per person? $1. But what do we have? We have millions of organizations creating behavioral therapy courses, right? So, and each one costs $1 million. What's 1 million times 1 million? A lot more than $1. So it makes financial sense if you could put money and share it amongst users to create 1 or 2 versions. And then if you could reuse it amongst different platforms and systems, you'd save a lot of money, wouldn't you? Makes sense. However, it's not quite as easy as that. When you reassemble objects, they don't always make pedagogical sense. Technically, you could share this stuff. Right now, we could create these API software applications and standards that allow all these different systems to talk to each other. So we can send information from one system to another. They could talk and see it. The problem is when you take learning objects from one place and reassemble them in another place, the objectives, activities, and assessments aren't always aligned. That's the fundamentals to design. Right? Where's my instructional designers, educators here? Right? That's a fundamental thing, right? Objectives have to be aligned with the assessment, has to be aligned with the activities. But when you reassemble stuff, the military is a great case. I worked on a big project recently trying to develop an ecosystem, or working to develop an ecosystem. And you got these Marines that will get training that's done for the Army, and guess what? Just because they're wearing a different uniform, they ignore it. But it would save millions of dollars. But you have these problems with reuse. So we need to map these sound learning and instructional principles to these technical attributes to facilitate learning. The challenge there is there's really a plethora of learning theories. So if you read research and theory, you know there's 4 major classes of learning theories: behavioral, cognitive information processing, cognitive constructivist, now neurobiological. Which one do you use to create that map, the pedagogy with the technical standards? There's even a greater range of instructional strategies associated with those theories. And all these people that are getting together to create these systems, some were informed. Others that I talk about, these 4 classes of learning theories, basically think I'm talking Latin. And they change over time. So how do you get people with all these different backgrounds, some engineers, some subject matter experts, some software people, some pedagogy, all agree on how to apply it? Difficult to achieve consensus to really on the scope, nature, and naming of these objects, which is necessary for these objects to make pedagogical sense. So if you get into this, very important possibly for reuse and saving millions and millions of dollars for an organization. Because think of all this stuff, game design costs money. If you ever tried to design a video game, you know that creating a business model is one of the hardest parts. So how can we create a model that allows us to create these things? All right, grounded design. So this is what I've been preaching for 20, 30 years. I'm really not that old, but since I was 10, I've been preaching about this stuff. Technology increases access and not quality. So important to keep in mind. Remember desktop publishing in the 1970s, right? Desktop publishing came out, 80s, okay? So then everyone felt like they could create a poster or a newsletter, and all this crap came out. It's like all this design, it's like, it looked terrible, you couldn't read it. Had 20 different fonts and underlines and all this stuff. So millions of more people could produce it, but the quality, if we use quality as reducing variance around set standards, that's the business and industry definition of quality, right? The quality went down because you got so many people producing stuff that's not trained. Well, that's exactly what's happening with e-learning now, right? So I got all these professors creating all these online courses with no background in design or pedagogy, and what's coming out the other end? This end, right? Well, maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm not going to go there. But again, technology increasing product, we have millions of online courses. Productivity, up. Quality, not so much. We know that design accounts for more variance in learners' reactions and performance and transfer than the actual technology. So technology is great, very important, keep up with the latest emerging technologies. I tend to focus on the design. So if you have a problem with your VCR, please don't ask me. I'm pretty good with the design part though. But we do need to keep up with the technology. But really, would you rather learn, well, people would learn better from a well-designed, self-instructional print package than a really badly designed 3D immersive game, right? That makes sense. So again, the focus being on design. So I preach and stick to instructional systems design, iterative in nature, output with one task uses input from a lot of people are saying, get away from ADDIE. It's because they don't know ADDIE. If you do apply it in a kind of a, what do they call that? Watershed, stepwise manner, yes, very inefficient. But there's nothing written that I've read in the Bible or other pieces of documentation that says you have to do that. It's when they apply it the wrong way. The key is the outputs used as inputs, right? Objectives used for assessments. Objectives, assessments used for the strategy. So you have this alignment. Design delivery grounded in research and theory. Those are the two key aspects that I think are important. So what is the difference between craft-based, which I would argue is 90, 80%? Where's my education designer? Would you agree that 80% of education and training out there is craft-based versus grounded and grounded? What's the difference? Anyone? Thoughts? What's craft-based subject matter expert design versus grounded design? Well, let me make it a little easier. First, what's the difference between information and training? What's the difference between reading a book, watching a movie, listening to music, it's all information, and going and taking a class? Behavior change. Well, I know. I went to Jaws. I will not swim in water. Changed my swimming behaviors completely. What's the difference? Assessment, they have assessment. Education typically has assessment. Training. The design, what aspects of the design?
Well, I mean, in terms of training, ideally it would have been design specific to transfer knowledge.
Design specific with maybe some assessments and maybe some activities or other events, right? So you have this intentional design of instructional events and activities that's designed to facilitate learning. Information you're just communicating, could be through multimedia, but you don't have these events and activities that are designed specifically and intentionally to promote learning. Would pretty much agree with that? Yeah? Shake your head. Let me know you're awake. Yes? Good. Okay. So what's the difference between craft-based design and grounded design? Well, I would argue that most of the training and education available in the US, anyway, is craft-based. The series of events and activities that are designed to facilitate learning is based on past practices, opinions, fads. I designed my training or course this way because this is how I learned. This is the template my company uses. I work with lots of training development companies. Why did you design it that way? Well, we have this template. It's worked. Lots of faculty across many different colleges all over the world. Why did you design this way? I learned this way. What's wrong with that? Grounded design, those series of events and activities are based on practical experience. Experience is very important, but also based, we have 100 years of research, people, on learning. Not sure why these people aren't using it. So grounded design, systematic implementation of process approaches that are grounded or rooted in what we know about teaching and learning. These are the conditions, and every one of my students, when they're doing any kind of work, have to be able to defend their design. Why did they put their button there? Why is that activity there? Why did they present that information that way? And defend it from based on learning theories or instructional theories. Consistent with research, traceable. You know why they made the decisions, and it's not because I think it's cool. Validated with successful implementations. I do a lot of design-based research now, which is really more, I think, more appropriate for our field, but that's a different topic. Based on desired outcomes. Significance, it aligns research theory and practice, explains and predicts results, allows for systematic, craft-based design works. We have thousands of examples of things that are designed by subject matter experts, and people learn. Mostly because people will learn no matter what's thrown at them, or smart people will. Right? Working with medical schools now, I just got a joint appointment with College of Medicine. Those kids are going to learn no matter what the professors do. But can we do better? I would say yes. This is what's important, though. Craft-based is not generalizable beyond that unique condition. You need to have that expert teach that course in order to make that work. Well, that's not generalizable. That's not scalable. That's why the time and effort you put in systematic design can be worth the investment and provides a pedagogical foundation for interact. Now you have a reason why you put that bulletin board there, or a reason you're using email, or all this other technology that's currently available to us. So here are our basic theoretical foundations. Learning, instruction, technology. Okay, so that's grounded design. So I feel like that's imperative as we move forward when you get into serious games. What is it grounded in? But then we have Jacob's ladder. So Jacob's ladder, I found, originally, was the connection between earth and heaven that Jacob dreamed about in the book of Genesis. That's cool. That's a nice kind of flight up there. I'd like to go there. Jacob's ladder's iconic device. How many people seen Frankenstein, right? Please tell me you've seen Frankenstein. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've seen these things, right? Jacob's ladder. I like to use, oh no, have you seen this horror flick? No? I haven't seen it either. I don't pay money to get scared. I saw Jaws, that's enough. Well, I use Jacob's ladder to bring these alien worlds of entertainment design and instructional design together. How many people remember edutainment? Edutainment, 1980s came out, right? There you go, Tony. He's old enough to remember edutainment, right? Edutainment, I feel like, it's like dinner theater. It's not really good dinner, and it's really not good theater. It's not Reese's Pieces. It's not, you just put these two things together, they just don't come out great. So what do you have to do? Well, I believe if you could get these entertainment designers together with the instructional designers, you could really create magic. Because all the time when I put if an entertainment designer leads the process, the game is cool, but then I always going, well, did I really learn anything from it? I liked the interactions, it's fun, but did I really learn? But when the instructional designers or educators lead the design process or dominate the design process, not too cool. It's like, oh, really? This is as boring as your class. Click, 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 click. Pass, pass, pass. So I believe the magic happens when you get these two sets of people and they actually respect and talk to each other. So the coolest projects I worked on is when we had entertainment people, software engineers, and designers and educators working together in a respectful way, and the ideas just float up to the top. And the learners. Oh my gosh, so important to bring the learners and do that psychographic analysis. So we're developing different pre-production processes to facilitate this because they don't naturally talk to each other. I found that software engineers and instructional designers can get along very well because they're engineering systematic processes as long as they respect each other. When you get to subject matter experts, not always. All right, number 2. This is one of my favorite topics now, neuroscience. So my parents were both cell biologists, and I grew up in laboratories. Cool stuff. So this is learning at a cellular level. Isn't that cool? That's the modulate. So this is what's happening right now in her brain. Maybe not his brain. But this is what's happening right now. If you're learning stuff, you're modulating your synapses and making stronger connections between neurons. So then the question is, what can we do to create environments that strengthen these synaptic connections? That's fundamentally what we're trying to do. Kind of cool. So engineers and architects are very good at correlating changes in structure to changes in function. That's why they're so good at predicting human behavior. An engineer can change a small piece of a car, and they know how that car will change in terms of going around and the speed and all that kind of stuff. An architect is also good. He can change a part of a room and know how the people will flow through that room. They're very good at predicting human behavior. How good are we at predicting human behavior? It depends. Great answer. That's exactly what I was looking for. That's the number one answer to all educational research, isn't it? It depends. We don't know. I believe that these disciplines are so good at predicting because they can correlate changes in structure to function. As educators and educational researchers, we've never been able to correlate that because we don't know what changes are happening in the brain. But now, we do. There's all this neuroimaging technology. It's incredible. There's still challenges, certainly. But all this, it's totally revolutionized medicine. How we treat physical and mental disorders now. Totally different than what we did 5, 10 years ago because of neuroimaging technology. Or that's one of the primary reasons. Because we can now relate changes in structure to changes in function. We now have all these physiological measures, much more accurate than psychological measures. And if you think about it, think about learning theories and educational research. It's all based on observation and self-report. It is. All paper and pencil tests. That's now electronic. But now we have these physiological measures and neuroimaging technology that are so precise that now I think we have the potential of better predicting human behavior, such as learning and performance, if we could correlate these two. So there are theories coming out. I like Medina's brain rules because you could actually trace his rules to neurobiological research. So you got to be careful. There's a lot of groups coming out that say we have this neuroscience stuff. Right? Would you say so? Hundreds of groups. Most of them are full of crap. Well, sorry. Not based or not grounded in the actual research. They make these broad generalizations based on the research. So I always look for stuff where I could actually trace it back to specific empirical studies. I found at Medina you actually can. So here are 12 rules that he's come out with. His book's very readable too. And then he has links to the research, which is cool. I now have students working on music. It's really cool. I got this musician from Mexico that's trying to put music. How many of you have been to a movie and not heard music? How many of you played a video game and not heard music? How many of you taken an online course and heard music? Something's wrong here, right? Still challenges, though. Okay? It's not panacea. You have the challenge of correlating physiological measures to psychological constructs. So if you see this change in heart rate, is it because you're excited or because you're scared? Hard to decipher sometimes. So there's no one-to-one correlation between these measures. So you've got to be careful how you interpret these data. You also have differences in spatial and temporal resolution, fMRIs. 5 minutes, I'm getting there. Okay, so let me get to this next part. That's why I went to 7. I had 10, should have gone to 5. All right, let me get to number 1. Number 1 important thing, emotions, imagination, gamification. So, anybody know who this guy is? You should be able to read, it's John Dewey. That's the hint, okay? So, I spent 30 years or more teaching people to ground their instructional designs and education courses on different theories. As long as they grounded on something, I felt like it was useful and went forward. But after raising kids, how many of you have kids? Right? Yep, most of you have kids. You know that they're going to put their hand on the fire no matter how many times you tell them not to do that, right? You can lecture to kids 100 times, even adults and adolescents, you can lecture as much as you want. Until they experience it, they're not going to change their behavior. So I have now all in experiential learning. So that's all my focus from a neurobiological perspective. So trying to explain experiential learning from a neurobiological perspective. So we know continuity, interactions are important. Presenting them with authentic challenges and experience, and then they acquire the skills and knowledge within the context of authentic challenges and authentic experiences. Makes sense, right? We got over 50 years of research, people believing it and applying it, different strategies based on experiential learning. But I would say they neither explicitly address nor adequately address human emotions. Learning theories in general, instructional theories in general, and please correct me if I'm wrong, have traditionally not incorporated measures of emotions and imagination because it's hard to measure, hard to define, and therefore hard to integrate into research. So I would argue without doing or adhering to or addressing emotions, we're failing to use or realize the potential of technology to facilitate learning. So what do we know about emotion and imagination? Emotions. How many people seen Inside Out? Very cool, right? Great movie. They actually had a bunch of neuroscientists on staff. And these are actually pretty good representations of our basic emotions. We have multidimensional measures of emotions that put it on a wheel or a bipolar scale, but most of those do not correlate highly with behavior. We find that the basic emotions are better predictors of behavior than these. These have come out from therapy, and it's useful for treating people with certain emotional disorders because they could relate to one of these emotions because there's so many of them. So it's communication between the provider and the patient. But we're finding there, from an evolutionary biology perspective, we develop these emotions. And look at these. How many of these are positive versus negative? See, it's not as balanced as this, right? So this is maybe an artificial representation of our emotion. We've developed these just to survive. Oh, shark, get away from that, right? Don't swim. So we know that emotions release neurotransmitters, and those neurotransmitters strengthen the synaptic connection. Remember that learning, right? So this explains why you remember really sad things and why you remember really happy, exciting things like this presentation. You got to remember this because it's so exciting, right? We know valence effects continue. If it's positive, you want to do it again. Negative, you don't. The most important thing with game design is this last one, where it changes over time, is what keeps people engaged. So you got to have this emotional roller coaster. I don't have any time left, do I? Your clock is all wrong. Sorry. Imagination, mental images, sensation, what you perceive without the stimulus. 2 lines of research, Disney, right? As well as perceptual imagination. We're using the perceptual imagination. Your brain imagines everything you think, feel, say, taste. All your senses, you're imagining. The important thing here is when you experience, remember, and imagine, it fires the same neurons. And guess what? When you fire the same neurons, you're strengthening the connection between those neurons. That's why reflective learning is so important. But how many times do we train our learners to imagine results? Right? Athletes have known this for hundreds of years. So athletes are always imagining their routine. I always imagine a perfect golf swing, so it doesn't always work. But we do know this. It strengthens the connections. Practice, right? So I'm going to go through some of these. So this is the actual neurobiological theory that we're creating called dimensions of experiential learning. This is the one I want you to check out because it might not be really right.
Well, I'm paying attention.
Okay. So we're positing this. So it does have imagination and emotions as key dimensions of the brain that lead to the expression of skills and behavior. And we're applying this. So who evokes emotion and imagination the best? If you had to pick one group of individuals. Children? Yeah, children. I would agree. Yeah. Who else? What? Hollywood. You saw the next slide. Entertainers, right? So this is the theory we're developing. We're taking principles of experiential learning, framing the experience, activating, reflect, integrating it with elements of story and game and play to create memorable experiences. So this is the strategy, the application of those theories, where we frame, activate, and here are stories, games. So we're developing this interface for apps, right? As well as for platforms where you present people with a story, following something like this. This is your Hollywood story arc. All movies and books actually follow some type of arc. How well it does makes it $1 million or you lose money, okay? But you have a hook, an inciting incident, these rising challenges. How many courses are designed this way? How about cases and even learner-centered stuff? So I would argue that entertainers know a lot of stuff that we could utilize, right? So then you have the story, you have the game. Oh, I got to do this. Do I have time to do this demo? One more thing. Okay, this is fun. All right, so people always say, why do you separate game from play? Okay, so you have, people with drinks, please put them down someplace. Drinks, please put drinks down, okay? So Grateful Dead concert, pretend you're at a concert. So what is the difference between game and play? We distinguish game and play for this theory because we think there's an important difference. So this is kind of fun, right? Woo! Wow! Who did that? So we have this thing going on, right? They've been to a concert. This is kind of fun. This is play. So we have a stimulus, we have a response, and we have these consequences. Okay, hold it. Hold the balls. Hold the balls. All right. So now, that's play. You have stimulus, response, and consequence. Right, here you go. Play, stimulus, response, and consequence, and it could be fun like that, right? So now we're going to do the game. So with the game, we're adding rules, tools, and goals. So let's get the beach balls, split the room in half. Let's say right here. Okay, let's put one beach ball at that table. Who stole the beach balls? You can't have them yet. Okay, right in the back corner, right corner. There, put it back there. One over here. One over here. Okay, so we're going to split about actually here, right? So this is one team. This is team A. This is team B. You've got to get everybody to touch the ball with one hand. If you're right-handed, you have to use your left hand. If you're left-handed, you got your... And everyone has to touch it once, and then you got to throw it back to the first person. Okay? And the winner, there's a goal. So we're in Canada. I was looking for M&Ms. They didn't have M&Ms. So we got maple syrup candy since we're in Canada, right? Eh? Terrific, eh? All right. So that's what the winners get, maple syrup, okay? So ready? Are we ready over that side? Ready, set, go! Go! One hand, touch it with hand. It's got to touch everybody. Everyone's got to touch it. Oh! It's going there. There you go. That's good. We're getting there. Almost. Oh. Next. Cool. Good. Yeah, there. Did everyone touch it now? Get it back to the beginning. I think everyone touched it over here. What are you guys doing? You guys are terrible. There, get it. Oh, no, they've touched it twice. Winner! Woo! All right. You guys get candy. Here you go, candy. Wonderful candy. Okay. You get candy too. Well, I don't want to hurt people. Here you go. We'll get candy out there. Okay. So that's a good demonstration, I think, for distinguishing game from play. Right? So game. So I found this a very effective way to design an application, because here are the rising challenges. When people create learner-centered instruction, they typically present people with authentic challenges. And you could design it to go from easy to complex. So here are your challenges. You got a story. How many game players? Hopefully you guys are game players. Do you play games? No, you see, some people, I don't either, really. My kids do. So how many of you read the rules first? No one, right? No one reads the rules first. So here you present them with the game, but now we have the technology and XAPI. You could push the knowledge which resides in this environment, and they could play with it, right? No winners or losers. That's the difference. Play, the beach ball. No winners or losers. You're just kind of playing. But the game, you have correct and incorrect answers. So now we have the technology to push the information to solve if they're having problems, or the learners can go acquire the information if they're good at self-monitoring. So I think this is a very effective frame for creating mHealth apps, right? My kids, what do? I'm sitting in line at the grocery store. Hi. And then we can go from there. Okay, I got to cut this out. So, sorry, I'm glad I got through that. Serious games, we could talk about. I just don't like the oxymoron of serious games. Games are fun. I always tell, I've had so many military people and some educators. This is serious stuff. Well, I take my courses very seriously. I wonder what happened to these people when they were children, though. Really. And I'm a civilian, so I could do that. I could say, what happened to you when you were children? Okay. All right. So I will leave you with those 10. Important, be creative. These are conditions to make sure what you do is creative. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Atsusi.